All right, guys, we're doing chest and back today. I've explained this in the past or on the previous video. I switched up my complete split. So before I was doing push legs pull 6 times a week. Because summer's around the corner, the weather's nicer, I don't really care to spend 6 days a week in the gym anymore. So we're going down to a 5-day split. But with that being said, I also was just kind of bored with the push pull. I've been doing that for years. I love it, but you know, you got to change things up sometimes, especially mentally. So I'm doing, my split now is chest and back on the same day, or back and chest, legs, and then a shoulder and arm day. And I do that 5 times a week. Now, I still have the opportunity to do 6 days a week if I want to throw in a second or an additional shoulder and arm day, which I do periodically as the weeks progress. But with that being said, we're doing both chest and back today. So it's a pretty big day. I've been doing it though for the past month and I really enjoy it. And how I sort of structure it is, if you notice, we're starting with lat pull down today. So on this particular day, I'm starting with a back exercise, but I still alternate the exercises. So I'll do a back and then a chest and then back and then a chest and then a back and then a chest. I typically will do 3 exercises for each muscle group. And the reason I alternate them is because if I were to just start with all back, by the time I get to chest, I'm burnt out and I'm tired and I don't have the energy, more so systemically speaking. Now, the great thing about this split though, by alternating between chest and back, is because they're opposing muscle groups, you're not actually fatiguing the opposite muscle group. So if I do a chest exercise, my back isn't going to be tired from that and vice versa. So that's why it's actually great and very complementary in that aspect. So I do like to alternate between the two though, because again, systemically speaking, if I get pretty fatigued, I'm just not going to have the energy if I save all my chest stuff after my back. So I like to start with either or. And then last thing, sorry, I'm freaking rambling. It always happens. I alternate the days. So today, for instance, is a back and chest, and then the next is chest and back. And all I mean by that is just the first exercise is just going to be different. So my first exercise for my next chest and back day is going to be incline dumbbell press, whereas my second exercise today is incline dumbbell press. So hopefully that makes sense. I usually just like to prioritize whatever muscle group I kind of want to focus on for that day, if that makes sense. So we did 1 working set already with lat pull downs. We've got 3 total. So I'm getting into my second now. We are going to increase the weight a bit. Now, my focus for this, I'll still explain the form in a second, but my focus for this is to just push myself as hard as I can and lift as heavy as I can. Now I'm trying to maintain good form through it all and control, but if there's a little bit of momentum or a little bit of swinging, I'm completely okay with that. I know I teach on my videos to minimize that, and the whole goal is to minimize as much as possible, but obviously as you increase the weight, you're gonna swing a little bit. So anyways, I'm gonna shut up because we got set number 2. All right, so that was second set. We got 1 more set. Now for the form, if you notice, I am swinging a little bit or using a bit of momentum. Like I mentioned, the heavier you go, obviously the harder it's going to be. So you don't have to be so rigid and strict. You can move through the movement 100%, but you want it to be controlled. So at the very least, try to control that eccentric as much as possible, or the negative. Especially with this exercise, it's hard to progress on this because of the resistance profile, generally speaking, on lat pull down, is we're going to be really weak in this end or shortened range or position based off of the mechanics and the mechanics of our muscles. Because we're weakest in this position, we have very little leverage in this position, but the machine actually gets heaviest in terms of the resistance profile in that shortened position. Whereas as you come up into this lengthened position, there virtually is no resistance on your lats at that, in that position, sorry. as you get heavier, it's going to be pretty hard. So you can use a little bit of controlled momentum, I like to call it, where you are going to kind of, you know, initiate the rep, obviously by driving shoulders and elbows down, but also leaning slightly back to get a bit of momentum just to kind of help yourself through that movement. But the key thing, again, I'll stress this every single time, is to control that eccentric on that way up on every single rep. So you don't want to just be loose and sloppy and just try to, you know, ego your way through it. Really focus on that control on that eccentric. We got one more set. We're going to go a little heavier. I'm going to try to push it. Like I said, the goal today is to just push it as heavy as I can, but still maintaining that control as much as possible, especially on that negative. For the form for this, one thing, if you notice, I'm not leaning back so much. So I'm not leaning all the way back like this, because for me, I want to focus primarily on those lats. I still want to target those upper back muscles, but I still want to target the lats. So I want to be as upright as possible. I can lean a bit back, but the more you lean, the more you're just doing some high row, or no different than just a horizontal row with your elbows flared at that point, if I lean all the way back. So I don't want to be doing that. For the form, I want to keep myself as upright as possible. I'm holding a slightly wider than shoulder width grip, but you can hold whatever width is comfortable for you. Now, the key thing is, though, is I want you to keep your elbows slightly tucked in as much as possible. Not to the point where you're uncomfortable, but just keep those elbows in front, almost like you're stacking these joints. Your wrists and elbows should be stacked. And then you're focused on initiating every rep by driving your shoulders and elbows down. You're not thinking about just pulling with your arms like this. So I'm focused on driving shoulders and elbows down, picking my chest up to that ceiling, or at least thinking about bringing my chest to that bar. Now, in terms of depth, how far should you bring this bar down? Go down as far as you comfortably can. Not everybody is going to be able to pull this bar and touch their chest with it just based off of mobility or their body structure. So just go as far as you comfortably can pull that bar. If it touches your chest, great. If it doesn't, and there's still a little bit of a gap, it's not a big deal. Give myself one more minute. Just talking to you guys and explaining it is a workout. Now, again, I do hold slightly wider, like probably pretty wide. And the reason being is, one, I just feel it more in my lats. For me, I feel a better contraction. I might not be able to get as much of a stretch. I mean, with this movement in general, you're not going to be stretching the lats nearly as much as if you're pulling in front like this, because you have the benefit of the rib cage to stretch your lat. But in this case, you are going to be missing out on a stretch regardless. But the wider you hold, you're also reducing even more of that stretch. Now, it's not that big of a deal. You're still getting length in your lat and in those back muscles. But the reason too why I like holding a wider grip is it minimizes any sort of bicep recruitment. So the less elbow flexion I can create, then the more back I actually feel, and the less I feel it in my biceps or my forearms. Because if I hold really narrow, then as I pull down, if you notice, I'm going to be getting a lot more elbow flexion. So I am going to be recruiting a lot more bicep. But by holding wider, I'm minimizing that elbow flexion, so less bicep activation. All right, let's do it. Now, I do like to throw in like a couple just partial reps, still trying to control it, just to fully burn out that set, take it close to failure, as close to failure as possible. But that's the last set here. We're gonna move on. We're gonna do some incline dumbbell press now for chest. So like I said, we're gonna alternate just to spare the energy for both muscle groups. That way I can push myself hard through the duration of most of this workout. And then obviously the last couple exercises, I'm gonna be pretty gassed. So we'll pick exercises that aren't gonna be as systemically fatiguing and more of like isolation work. Now, for the incline dumbbell press, I did one warm-up I'm probably going to do 2 warm-up sets. The last chest and back day I did, I started with chest, and I did pretty heavy dumbbell presses. So we'll see how much I get today. I am only going for probably 3 working sets, hopefully, depending on how I feel. I feel pretty good. So right now I'm saying 3 working sets, so long as I can push it, and hopefully try to match what I did on my previous chest and back day, though it was only like 3 days ago. So we'll see. But yeah, we got 1 more warm-up. And for my warm-ups, I don't go to failure, obviously, because it's a warm-up set. So I don't try to tire myself out as quickly. Now, I do pyramid up. I just feel better anyways, because oftentimes when we are training, you may have noticed this when you're pushing it. Sometimes, especially in the beginning of workouts, it can take, 3 or 4 sets to actually start to feel warmed up, where all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, now I feel strong, or now things aren't hurting, or I'm not as stiff. So that's why I like to utilize the warm-up sets as pyramid sets to kind of climb up to that working weight, as opposed to just going right into it cold. I've done that before. I did that when I was younger, and it can work to just go into a set cold right away. However, I find it isn't sustainable long term. I start to kind of feel like shit. I don't feel good. I start to ache, probably because you're injuring yourself. So anyways, we're gonna go a little heavier for the warm-up. Started with 45, go up to 80. Now I know some of you are probably thinking like, how is that a warm-up? But again, I'm treating this as a pyramid set. So I'm not going right to failure. I'm probably stopping like 4 or 5 reps shy. Okay. That was good. I think we stopped 1 or 2 reps shy of failure there. 8 reps, not bad. 110s, first set. Pretty pumped about that. I've been getting stronger at this, obviously, if you look at like my previous chest day videos where I was only doing like 105s, 110s for maybe like 6 reps. So that one I got to 8 and I didn't go right to failure. Plus I'm still kind of warming up. So I think in terms of my chest, so I think maybe the second set I could do a bit better. We'll see, hopefully. We'll definitely stay there on the next set, and then, I don't know, maybe go to 115s on the last. See if we can get like 5 quality reps or 6. 5 or 6 on that one. When it comes to my current split, when I do the chest and back days, I'm just keeping things simple for my split. I get asked a lot, can I repeat my push day on my second push day, or my pull day on my second pull day, if you're doing them twice a week? And the answer is 100% you can. I'm actually doing that. So whatever I do today is what I do on the next chest focus chest and back day, sorry. I do the exact same thing. I just swap it in a different order of operation, like I mentioned earlier, starting with the muscle group that I want to try to progress at for that specific day. But I keep things simple for this split this time around. I'm keeping the exercises simple. And I'm also just kind of doing things that I like to do. I'm doing the exercises that I like to do, whether they're optimal or not. I love training with a science-based mindset, but I also love the bro science aspect too. I do believe in, you know, the most important thing, honestly, is just coming to the gym and enjoying it. Picking exercises that you enjoy doing, because if you enjoy doing them, you're going to push yourself even harder through them. If you do an exercise that you don't like doing or that you find uncomfortable, there's no way in hell that you're going to be pushing yourself to actually be better at that specific movement. And you're just not going to get better because you hate it. So if you dread doing something, don't do it. Just pick exercises, at the very least, pick exercises that you really enjoy doing, and then continue to work and push yourself as hard as you can at those movements. And you're going to progress and you're going to see results 100%. So I'm just keeping things very basic for the sake of this split, for this next block that I'm doing, just because I want to have fun and I want to enjoy it, and it's going to keep me accountable. So didn't want to kill my camera lady. Close call. Oh, that's fine. 8 reps, I'm good with that. Like I said, last time I did this 4 days ago, I started with this. So I had a lot more energy in general, overall, like systemically speaking. But because I started lat pull downs, this could still hinder the performance, but that's fine, because the goal is to still try to maintain as much control. Yes, I'm trying to hit, hopefully, a target rep range, but if I don't hit that, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm regressing. Because again, it depends on which order you're starting with the actual movement. So if you keep this movement in the same spot of your workout all the time, that's sort of the metric that you want to measure on. So I'm not comparing this to the set or the sets I did on my previous day where I started with chest and started with this particular movement, if that makes sense. So you don't have to feel like, oh, you know, shit, I'm regressing, or, you know, I didn't do as good as last time. Just depends. And even if you did start with it and you're starting with it again and you are getting less reps, it could be a whole fleet of things. Are you coming at a different time in the day? Have you eaten the same meals or the same, you know, amount leading up to the workout? Have you drank enough water, as basic as that sounds? And lastly, most importantly, have you gotten the same amount of sleep as you previously did? So there's so many variables that affect performance that you kind of have to keep in mind. So don't beat yourself up. And the only reason I'm going on about that is because I have a lot of online clients that do tend to beat themselves up when they don't see the results right away that they've kind of set in their mind. Because they're not getting there, they think, or because they don't see it right away, sorry, they think they're not progressing. But in reality, in the grand scheme of things, you're still progressing. So as long as you can keep the intensity the same, as long as you can push yourself, you got good control, you're making progress. Worst case is you just need a little bit more rest. You just take a few days off and then you come back and you hit it again and you're stronger. So I think for the third set, I am gonna probably just stay there just because I'm capping it at 8. If I go up to 115, I don't know. I'll save that for the next chest day. I want to see what I can get when I start with the actual dumbbell press, and then I can do the 115s and try to match it to what I did last time. But for the sake of today, I think I'm just gonna stay at 110s and just try to push it right to failure on this last set. Now for the form, what I want you focused on, because we're doing incline, you still want you to keep that chest up high. Don't worry about if you're arching your lower back. You don't want to be hyperextended to the point where you're like tucking all the way down and back. You don't want to be doing that. But everyone's spine shape is slightly different. So if you have a little bit of an arch, I typically do. That's just what's comfortable for me. I find by keeping myself elevated like this, keeping my chest up, I just feel less shoulders involved. And I find I can focus primarily on those upper pecs. So to me, I just feel more stable and I feel comfortable. So that's why it may look at times that I have quite an arch, but I don't. My spine is actually just shaped that way. Next, keeping that chest and sternum up high the entire time. Now, as you press, I don't want you thinking about bringing your hands together. I want you focused on more so just driving your biceps in towards your pecs or towards your chin. So you're almost just thinking about driving your biceps in, trying to touch your chin, as opposed to bringing the weights in. Don't focus on the weights, focus on the biceps in this upper part of your arm, because that's where the pec actually attaches. It attaches here, not at your hand. So it doesn't matter how far you bring your hands across. What matters is how far you bring your bicep across your chest. As you come down in the movement, you're controlling that eccentric, coming down as far back as you can, pulling your shoulder blades together, keeping that chest and sternum up high, again, creating as much of a stretch in your pecs as possible. Now, lastly, breathing is crucial. Breathing is important, obviously, but I even like to take it one step further. As corny as that sounds, it's not actually, but I like to think about inhaling on every rep at the bottom here to create and almost exaggerate that stretch, to expand that rib cage, open everything up, and create a bit more tension and stretch in my actual pecs, because the pecs run across the rib cage. So if you can expand that, you generally are going to be stretching those muscles a little bit further. And then lastly, control that eccentric. If you notice, my rep speed and tempo might be a little quick. I'm okay with that. 1 second down, 1 second up is just as effective as coming down for 2 to 3 seconds. And if anything, I'd argue if your goal is to get stronger and progressively overload through weight and load, don't focus on the tempo necessarily if you're going for a heavier set. Because if you slow the rep down too slowly, you're just going to be running yourself into a wall, because you're going to be utilizing too much energy focusing on slowing the rep as opposed to actually executing the rep. So again, minimizing the ego, minimizing the cheat reps, but rep speed isn't that big of a deal. Just focus on coming down and driving up as hard as you can. Oh, come on. Okay, that's it. 3 shitty little partials at the end there. Oh, that's it. That was right to failure. Nothing left in the tank. We're gonna move on. We're gonna do some rear delt rows. I'll show you that literally right behind me. Ooh. Ooh. That was just one warm-up set, roughly. A little heavier warm-up, 60 pounds there. But because I've already done lat pull downs, my back is going to be pretty warmed anyway, so I don't need to do anything crazy. We're just doing one kind of warm-up set and then 2 working sets here. So I am going to go heavier. I'm aiming for 8, somewhere between that 8 and 10 or 12 rep range. Okay, set number 2, 6 to 8, 10. I said 8 to 12, so we're going to aim for 8 to 12. This is kind of heavy, 90 pounds each side is no joke for a rear delt row. Now what I'm thinking about when I'm doing these is I'm really trying to keep myself as locked and stable in this position as possible. Now I can pick my chest up a little bit. I am trying to pick my chest up a bit because I still want to focus on the upper back muscles. Now the great thing with this movement is because I'm using a flared out elbow position, even when I start to get partial reps, I'm still actually working in not necessarily a full range for the rear delt, but still a broader range of motion for the rear delts, not so much for the upper back muscles. So I am going heavier because I want to initially target those upper back muscles by retracting my scapulas. But once I start to fatigue in that position and my scapulars don't retract. The great thing is because the rear delt serves zero purpose in terms of retracting your shoulder blades, as I still elevate these elbows up, I'm still going to be working the rear delts. That's why I actually really like this movement, because I can kind of hit two birds with one stone by targeting the upper back muscles. And then once I start to fatigue, it goes pretty much all into the rear delts. So we are still focused on partial reps for these, even at failure. Oh man, now breathing is 100% a limiting factor on this. The heavier you go, the harder it is to breathe. I ate an entire massive bag of popcorn last night, and it's a lot of fiber. So needless to say, I'm super bloated and feel like I'm about to shit my pants. So, and I just feel so friggin' burpy. It is what it is. It was good popcorn. One thing I hate about popcorn though is I love it and I enjoy it, but it's the stupid little shells, those thin shells that get wedged in your gums every single time. I have like one tooth, one molar that just gets littered and obliterated by those little shells. It's just, I don't know why. They just always seem to go into the same spot in that same tooth and gum. It's so frustrating. And then when you try to floss it out, you like push them deeper. Hurts. They start bleeding. Anyways, I'm delaying the time it takes to do this set. All right, last set. Only 2 working sets here, like I mentioned. I'm staying with the same weight just because we are getting around that sort of, we're failing around 8 and then we're doing like partials to 12 roughly. Now for my form, actually before I get locked in, for my form, I forgot to mention, I'm literally focused on driving not just back. So I'm actually thinking about driving out and away. It may not look like that because these are pretty damn heavy, but I'm literally trying to throw these weights almost out towards the wall. I'm not doing a fly though, but I'm thinking about driving my elbows out and away from me as opposed to just driving them back like this and keeping everything tucked. So driving those elbows out and away, pulling them as far back behind me as I can to retract everything and get the deepest possible contraction in those upper back muscles and in that rear delt. Full stretch. So I'm reaching down to the ground, driving elbows out and away. Oh, holy shit. Feels like my damn eyeballs are gonna pop out of my socket. Oh. Okay, we're gonna move on. We were gonna do dumbbell rows today because I love those, but I did legs yesterday and I actually did Smith machine good mornings and I went pretty heavy. So my spinal erectors and my lower back are pretty exhausted today. So I'm gonna do pretty much everything chest supported for this workout today. Normally I like doing dumbbell rows, but because of that, I'm pretty tired. At least my lower back is. So there's actually a new machine we got in at Pure, which I'm really excited to try. So we'll go over there, try it out. I mean, it might be a bit redundant because it's a similar arm path as literally what I just did, but maybe I'll try to keep my elbows tucked in to work a little bit more lat. But I want to try it, so we're gonna use that. Sorry, we're gonna do a chest exercise, chest press, and then we'll go to that new back exercise. So now I'm pretty warmed up with my chest, so we are just doing one set, kind of warm-up set, but just to make sure that everything's set up accordingly, make sure that I'm set up accordingly and everything feels okay, especially my shoulder. My right shoulder is always weaker and feels like shit. So I always like to make sure that I'm set up before I get right into the movement. We are doing This incline machine, you can use, if you're doing this exercise or this workout, sorry, then if your goal is to work the overall chest in this workout, then do like a flat press or something. But I like this machine and I want to hit a bit more upper pec. So I'm going to do that, even though it is a bit redundant because this is literally the same thing as a dumbbell press. But like I said, I'm just doing things lately that I like to do, that I enjoy doing. Okay, that was just a warm up. We'll see how this set feels. If I fatigue pretty quick, we're just going to do 2 working sets here. If I feel pretty good, we'll do 3. Okay, that's pretty good. We'll do 3. Oh, we got one more set. Uno mas. I think we're gonna go heavier. 4 plates and just aim for a slow 4 to 6 reps. Just really try to burn it out, but go heavy. I am feeling pretty good. Like I said, I got sick yet again. It lasted damn near a week and a half in terms of my energy levels. I was really exhausted all last week and the week before. But I feel pretty good. I feel like I've kind of bounced back pretty quick. You recording this whole thing? Oh. As long as shite. Now, some of you might wonder too, and I have been asked this many times, is should you take every single set to failure? And I think the answer is completely individual. It's I know when I say these things and I talk about my opinion on things, and it's not very black or white. And nothing actually truly is black or white, especially when you're falling on science. It's never black or white. There's always a gray area. So I think in terms of, generally speaking, yes, you should try to push yourself as hard as you can for every single workout, every single exercise, and for majority of the sets. Do you have to go to failure for every single set? No, you don't. Should you? Depends. If you're someone who is a beginner, chances are you're probably just going to get results regardless of how far you push those sets. The more advanced you become, the longer you've been doing this for, the harder it is to get results because your body has adapted. The more effort it takes to actually gain muscle and hypertrophy. So yes, I'd say the goal should be to try to push yourself as close to failure for most of those working sets. Now, you don't have to go right to failure. You can stop 1 or 2 reps shy of failure. That's equally effective and probably, more sustainable long term, because you're not dealing with nearly the amount of systemic fatigue that you'd be dealing with if you took every single set to failure. When you're dealing with isolation work, I think 100% try to push it right to failure. When you're dealing with more compound movements, maybe stop 1 to 2 reps shy, especially if you're using free weights, because if you don't have a spot and you go right to failure, the risk of injury actually starts to increase. So I think if you're using a machine and you're doing a compound movement, yeah, you can push it close to failure or right to failure. But again, the more advanced you become, the more you actually start to know your body. So you'll actually start to know what works well for you. Last thing I'll say though, in terms of failure, is I think everybody should 100% take every exercise at some point in their training journey to failure. Now, what I mean by that is, and why that would be important, is because you'd actually understand what that movement feels like and what that muscle feels like being taken to failure. So therefore, you'd be more knowledgeable in terms of how to pull yourself back from failure and stop 1 to 2 reps shy. If you tell someone who's never taken a set to failure or a specific exercise to failure, they may not really know how far that is. So if you say, I'm mixing it up. If you tell someone to take a set to 1 to 2 reps shy of failure, they may not really understand that. They may be like, well, I don't really know what that threshold is because I've actually never even taken it to failure. So then again, that just goes back onto what I was saying is, by all means, try to take every exercise that you do at some point in your journey to failure, just so you understand what that feels like to take that specific movement or that muscle right to failure. And then that way you can better gauge, all right, this set, I'm only going 1 to 2 reps shy. This set, I'm gonna go right to failure. And then you kind of have an idea of how that looks and what that feels like. So, all right, enough talking, last set. 4 to 6 reps, controlled. That's 4. Oh. Okay. All right, now we're gonna move on. Now we got that new back exercise we're gonna try. Hopefully it's open. I know I said earlier I'm not gonna be doing dumbbell rows. This is basically a dumbbell row. I didn't know, I thought I could do chest supported double arm, but no matter how high I adjust this, I just don't like the feel of it when I'm keeping my elbows tucked in. It feels great when I'm wide, but then that defeats the purpose because we literally just did that, so it's kind of redundant. So for this sake, we're gonna be doing like a dumbbell row, but on this machine, just to try it. I don't feel like switching things up. 2 working sets here, 1 warm-up set right now, just to kind of see how it feels. Yeah. Ooh. I think what I like about this is we can adjust these handles here so I can have more of a supinated grip through the actual rowing movement. So almost slight underhand, which is great for single arm to kind of mimic a dumbbell row because it allows me to really keep my elbow close to my body. Whereas if I do just a regular dumbbell row, you run the risk of hitting that dumbbell against you no matter how tight you try to keep your form and how much you try to move your hip out of the way. You're still restricted because of that dumbbell, and especially if you go heavier, the dumbbell gets bigger. So there's more surface area you have to kind of contain and try not to hit yourself with. So this is kind of cool. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. So 2 working sets now. We're gonna go heavier. Aim for about, again, like everything, 8 to 12, somewhere in that rep range. Full stretch. Okay. Yeah, it's cool. I like this. The dumbbell feels a bit better because I find I can pull my hand further down towards my hip. This feels like I need to stand higher up above it, but then I'm kind of reducing the range, and then I fall into that same issue I had when I'm resting my chest. I can't get, my arm far enough in front of me to get that range. So further I stand, the more my arm's here, whereas I want it to be here, right? So that's why I'm kind of back like this, because I can get that stretch. But then it moves still moves on an arc, but it kind of stops here, whereas I kind of want it a little bit back here. It's a bit pedantic. It still feels great. Anyways, here's the review of the new Tech M torture machine. Last set, we're gonna go heavier, 4 plates. So just like with a dumbbell row, my focus is I want to drive my hand into this pad, keep myself locked and stable, drive my foot into the platform, again, keeping my hips stable. I don't want to be twisting or rotating at all in the movement. I do want to be protracting to get that stretch, but I'm not twisting at my torso. So I'm keeping myself rigid and just trying to create as much tension and length in that lat, driving that palm down towards the ground and that shoulder down towards the ground. And then as I initiate every rep, I'm focused on driving shoulder and elbow down and back, squeezing that lat, keeping my elbow tucked against my side as close as possible the entire time. And then lastly, when I'm about here, I'm actually thinking about wrapping that elbow around my back to fully contract that lat. Again, as you increase that weight and the heavier you start to go in the movement, you can use a bit of momentum. You can have a little bit of body English. That's completely fine. All right, come on. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Oh. That's it. Oh, that's it. So hopefully you can kind of see what I'm trying to do there. I'm trying to minimize as much rotation and twisting of my torso as possible. And then pulling that elbow and shoulder down, but back. Trying to wrap that elbow around my back, squeezing that lat. Again, a little bit of momentum is fine, especially the heavier you go. Your focus should be obviously good form. Control is the main thing. But again, a little bit of body English, momentum is fine. If that means pushing yourself a little further. You know your body more than anybody else, so don't let people tell you that what you're doing is necessarily wrong if you know what you're doing and you're intentional about it. All right, we're gonna move on. One last thing, 2 sets. We're just gonna finish off with a dumbbell fly for chest, just to kind of stretch everything out. So I will see you there. Okay. Oh. Okay. So we did 2 working sets there of the dumbbell, just regular dumbbell flies. I have the bench set up on a very slight incline, like literally 15 degrees or something. Super low or super shallow of an incline. Reason being is it just feels better for my chest and my shoulders. I find if I'm too flat, I feel a bit too much shoulders, at least for me. So I like to have a slight incline no matter what, whenever I'm doing pressing or flies, even though this is still gonna primarily target more of these mid pec fibers anyways, because I'm having such an arch in my back. I'm keeping that chest and sternum up high. Now, if you noticed, I'm only coming in just this far, because again, my whole goal for this movement is to target primarily that lengthened range of the movement. I like saving movements like this you know, not every exercise, or sorry, workout is going to have the same format or structure. I try to keep it similar. Not every time it's going to be the same, but for the most part, I do like finishing my workouts off with more of a loaded lengthen exercise. Now, what I mean by that is it's just an exercise that primarily loads the lengthen or stretch range of that target muscle. So in this case, with the dumbbell flies, because we're dealing with gravity, when I extend out like this and fly and open up, those weights get further away from this active joint, which is my shoulder joint. That's going to be the most active in this movement because I'm targeting the pecs. But when my hands move furthest away from that point, that's going to be the greatest amount of resistance in the actual movement. And as I fly in, the resistance does drop off because my arms get closer, in closer to that active joint. I wanted to say it shortens the moment arm, but we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of the science. So in other words, my hands start to get closer to that shoulder joint. In other words, if I come in fully, I'm doing what's called stacking the joints where my wrist, elbow, and shoulder are stacked, which is not really what I want to do, because then that line of force of gravity is just going straight through that, and I actually start to lose tension and resistance on the actual pecs. So I just try to keep, in other words, my hands outside of my shoulders the entire time. And then also lastly, I'm killing two birds with one stone by saving a loaded lengthen exercise towards the end of my workout. I am also actively stretching out the target muscle, which in this case is the pecs. So with that being said, if you guys made it this far in the video, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for watching. Continue to work hard, continue to be diligent, be intentional, and as always, take it easy, and I'll see you on the next video.